Welcome to Happy Crappy Paints, the second part in the locked character series. If you haven't unlocked this character and do not want any spoilers, stop the video now. In this video we're painting the Elementalist, and this is the end result. As usual, pause here if you want to assemble the paints and come back. I pre-shaded this mini using a black primer as the base, and then a white primer from the top. This is optional, you do not have to do this. I used Zandri Dust for the cape, as the base color for the cape. Pre-shading is a technique that can be used successfully if you use very thin paints or washes to really quickly get an okay effect. In this instance I'm painting right over the shade, so pre-shading in this instance is not anything that benefits the painting. I decided to try that at first, and then decided not to use pre-shading on any of the miniatures in this series. Might be something that I try for the next board game I'm painting, whatever that might be. I'm skipping ahead on this video, not showing all of the areas and steps of the painting. I try to have clips of all the different steps, but not to bore you with a very long video showing the whole process. I decided to cut some of the middle sections all out from each clip. Using Deathclaw Brown as the base skin color, wanting to vary the tone between the different miniatures in Gloomhaven. The artwork is very light brown, and I didn't want all of these characters to look pretty much the same, so I want to go a little warmer. So Deathclaw Brown is a much warmer brown than Zandri Dust, for example, that I used for the cape here. Both Zandri Dust for the cape and the Deathclaw for the skin, both of those areas needs to be painted at least once to get the layers to cover completely. I think I painted Zandri Dust 3 times on the cape. I have not recorded all of those layers. Here you can see I'm painting a second layer of Zandri Dust. You can also see that the black on the legs are shining through, and that a second layer was needed for on the legs. You'll also see a little bit later that I am not spending enough time really on shading and layering and highlighting the cape, wanting this to be a very quick paint. I'll come back to that a little bit later. Ushabti Bone for the rigid structures on the Elementalist's back. It looks like it might be bone on the artwork. I have no idea. I decided that it would be bone in the beginning of the paint or this paint session, so I painted it all in Ushabti Bone. I will later on paint over this with a gold color, but I started out thinking that it should be bone, similar to what it looked like on the artwork, and then changed my mind. if you want to follow my example and use gold, you should paint a brown color, either Ushabti Bone like I did, or a darker brown underneath a gold metallic to make the gold look really good. Don't paint gold straight on white. Using a blue greenish shade for the belt and also the braces for the arms. Here I'm deviating from the artwork to make the miniature more interesting and look a little more colorful on the table. I was not too happy with how bland and boring it looked on the artwork. Here I'm adding a second layer of the skin tone to the whole of the miniature. Also adding the skin tone to the arm that I've forgotten for the first part of painting this miniature. I just didn't see it for some weird reason, so I added that there. Also going over the armor or the bone structure a second time with the Ushabti Bone. Decided to use Agrax Earthshade for the cape and later on for the skin as well. At this point I hadn't decided if I wanted to use more red shade for the skin or Agrax Earthshade. So you'll see me painting or applying this shade in 2 different sessions, but if you want to do as I do, then you can add Agrax to both the cloth and the skin. This is how it looks after the wash has dried completely. And here I'm adding the Agrax to the rest of the body. Using Seraphim Sepia for the bone armor on the back of the miniature. This is not going to end up showing a lot since I'm painting gold over it, but I wouldn't skip this step anyway, unless you paint the bones with a little bit darker shade of brown than Ushabti Bone to sit beneath the gold paint. Using Zandri Dust to highlight the cape back up again. This is where you see that I take shortcuts and don't spend enough time to really make it look good. What you should do if you want to spend time is use Zandri Dust to paint most of the dark areas away again, and then smooth the edges between Zandri Dust and the wash by painting some of the wash back onto it, and then go back again with a highlight and maybe add some white or Ushabti Bone even to Zandri Dust to paint the very top edges of all of the cloth in a lighter color. So I went the quick route on this one. It looks okay, but certainly not my best job. Here we are creating the highlight for the skin tone. This is what I mentioned with you can do also with the Zandri Dust. You can, similar to this, add Ushabti Bone to Zandri Dust to create a lighter shade, or pure Ushabti Bone for that matter, to highlight the cloth as well. But here I'm using a little bit of water and the skin tone and then Ushabti Bone to create a lighter shade to highlight the skin with. The light in my paint area is very warm, and the camera I have a hard time adjusting for it, or adjusting the colors for it. So it's a little bit difficult actually to show an accurate representation of the colors in my videos. I'll try to change my setup, maybe change the way I light my miniatures or light my workspace to see whether I can get the colors to actually be a little bit better, or potentially if there's anything I can do in post-production to bring the whites back to white. So you can see the white plastic container I have as my wet palette looks yellow and not white. So that's future enhancements that I plan to do to my paint studio. Using Drakenhof Nightshade to shade and create some depth to the belt and the braces. Averland Sunset is the first of the yellow shades I'm using to paint the Elementalist's chests and eyes. I'm using quite a few different shades of yellow here, and also a little bit later an orange shade. It doesn't. This is an example of why this lighting is not really helping me here in this videos, because it's kind of hard to see. So you have to trust me. That looks good. You can also see that I wasn't too careful applying the yellow to the eyes. We're going to correct that with shade and then paint the skin tone back over the miniature again, so it's going to look better when we're done. Here I'm going back with a highlight to the bone. This is not really necessary. If you want to paint them gold, as I did. Here I'm just showing that I missed to highlight the cape in the neck. Also using the blue to highlight the belt and the braces back up again after we had the Drakenhof Nightshade on it. I am painting these things while the other layers are drying, so that's why I'm jumping back and forth between yellow and blue and so on. Here we are mixing Ushabti Bone again with the blue to create a highlight color for the belt and the braces. Yriel Yellow as our next yellow shade. Now that the first layer is dried, painting that yellow in a little smaller than Averland Sunset in the eyes, and also in the center of the chest, not all the way out to the edges, to show a grade from dark to more light or more sharper yellow. Flashgit Yellow in the very center of the chest, and also in the very center of the eyes as well. Using Fuegan Orange as a shade for the yellow pieces in the chest and also the eyes. And you'll see here that I actually decided that I like this shade, so I applied it to the whole head, not the whole miniature or the whole skin, but just the head. But you can actually, if you want, to apply this to the whole of the skin. I decided not to because it means you have to go back and highlight it again, but it looks kind of nice. And then the chest, to make it look glowy, almost lava-esque. Again, using the highlight color, the skin highlight color, using it underneath the eyes and also the top of the nose and around the mouth, to using this to shape the yellow, to make it smaller and bring back the highlight to the head. Using Auric Armour Gold for the buckles on his cape, and also the armor in the back, and the rivets to the braces. The gold color, like all metallic colors, it really need to be mixed and shaken, and in my case also stirred, to make the metal flakes spread evenly in the jar. They've all sunk to the bottom in my jar, so to make sure that you get a really thick layer of gold, so you don't have to paint a gazillion layers. I do recommend to stir your gold paint once in a while. Using gold for the leaves or buckles, looks almost like leaves on the belt. Here you can also see that a little bit better representation of the chest and how glowing it looks. Using Flashgit Yellow to bring back the centerpieces of the chest after the Fuegan Orange have dried completely, to make it glow a little extra. And also a small little dot in the eyes. Using Eshin Grey for as the base color for the stones. So we're all getting to a point where we're almost done with this miniature. So just the stone and the base plate left. Using Nuln Oil as a shade for the stone. Painting a second layer of the gold as the Nuln Oil is drying. Using Dawnstone as the highlight color for the stones now that the Nuln Oil has dried. So using a dry brush technique, actually leaving quite a bit of paint in the bristles of the brush. I really wanted a heavy dry brush. If you're not super familiar with dry brushing, it's always safer to use less paint than more paint in the brush, and then dry brush many layers. So if you haven't painted or used dry brushing techniques before, it's always safer to remove most of the paint in the brush. That way you won't miss and hit other parts of the mini you don't want to hit, and accidentally adding too much paint, so you have to go back and add the base color again. All that remains now is to paint the base black and then add a matte varnish to protect the miniature. This is the end result. Thanks for watching.